What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Marcus Washington, and you're on the mark where we talk everything Falcons football, and it is Falcon Black Monday. If you've been living underneath a rock or been kidnapped the last 24 hours, you would have heard that we officially fired Arthur Smith last night at approximately 12:01. Um, there is going to be a press conference held at 4 o'clock. So we're on here a tad bit early because um, I wanted to kind of watch this with y'all. Um, Washington has already had their press conference. Um, and the interesting thing about Washington is, they got Magic Johnson in the mix over there, of course, but they've also enlisted the help of Bob Myers, who was Golden State's GM during their dynasty run. So that's kind of pretty interesting to see Washington take that approach. And they spoke highly of Ron Rivera. I don't know why I call him Juan. Ron Rivera. But it's a results driven league, fam, and that is just what it is. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta move on. Let me get to some of these comments. Jonte says, "What's up, fam?" He says Campbell said it was a possibility that Art was going to get fired. Yeah, I mean, everybody knew the temperature, man. You can't lose that many games to teams that are weaker than you as far as roster and everything else. You can't continually lose those games. But also, if you even go back to his first year with Matt Ryan, we were 0 of 8 in game-winning drives. Like games where we could have won, we were 0 for 8. And then if you go back last year, that team could have easily won 10 games. And then you go back to this year, it's like, bruh, somebody said it best. In the first 2 years, Arthur Smith was able to do more with less. This year, he did less with more. And there's no way that should even make sense as far as productivity goes, but that's exactly what happened. What's going on, Monica? What's happening? What's going on, Keonis? Loco says he out of here. Carlos says, bro, we definitely have to bust a brick for that embarrassment yesterday. I need a Super Bowl win in their city. Hey, man, I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. Maddie says, one damn point, Marcus, LOL, shit sucks. Now you know how I felt during the regular season. Maddie's talking about his fantasy football loss in our fantasy league. The man lost by 1 point. I think you were up by like what, 40 something or something ridiculous. But Eli, who won, man, he had two guys that damn near went for 40 on his team that brought him back. So I know how you feel. I know how you feel. Gee, what's going on? He said, what's up, Marcus? Who would you like to be the next head coach? Again, I'm holding off for that because we haven't gotten any word on Belichick. He's supposed to be meeting with Robert Kraft later on today. That's going to be interesting because Bill Belichick said yesterday he's still under contract. So, they'll have a conversation to see what's best for the team. Him mentioning that, they're probably going to have to cut ties. I don't think there have been talks about you'd have to trade to get Bill Belichick, but the way I'm looking at it now, they're probably just going to cut. Just make a fair split and just call it quits. I don't think the Patriots are going to be asking for any trades for Belichick because I don't think that's going to be an option when it comes to Bill leaving. So I don't know. And then Mike Vrabel, again, we don't know what's going on there. Will Levis was asked about Mike Vrabel, and he said, well, he told us he would communicate with us when he knows more. So again, if you see a Bill Belichick exit, you might see a Mike Vrabel arrival in New England. So there's a couple of things. We don't know where Harbaugh is until after today. So I mean, it's a lot of movement, man. So we don't know. We don't know. And a lot of these guys that might be coming up for possible head coaching positions, they're in the playoffs right now. You know, you got somebody like Dan Quinn, who I feel like he better not double back over here. You got Raheem Morris, who's got a playoff game this weekend. So again, man, options are still out there right now that aren't really options as of yet. But man, I'm pretty sure there's been a lot of backdoor channeling between these owners and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't know for an absolute fact what's going to go down. Country says, what's up, Marcus? I hit you up on Facebook Messenger to let you know he was gone. Yeah, I was up. I got some great sleep last night. Once I found that out, I jumped on here for about 15 minutes. Man, I put my head on the pillow. I slept great last night. Absolutely great. Martavia says, I turned into Ric Flair when he got fired. Woo! Devin, what's going on? He says, yo, what up, Mark? I woke up at 4 a.m. to my power being out, but at the same time woke up to Arthur Smith's bags packed. Yeah, man. I think let me get this one. Dave says, I like Terry enough to want him to resign rather than watch him be embarrassed. Here's the thing, man. I what I found fascinating about yesterday, and I've seen this maybe a handful of times in my life, where damn near everybody was happy a coach got fired. And I'm not just talking about the fan base. I'm talking about people that were fans of other teams. I watched a couple of fantasy guys last night. Them guys were ecstatic that Arthur Smith got fired. So it wasn't just the Falcons fan base. And I was like, wow. But that's how badly this team has performed this year. And earlier this year, when I talked about expectations, I was told that you shouldn't have expectations. However, when the brass fired Arthur Smith, they said it didn't meet expectations. So even the brass had expectations that everybody, let's just be real, everybody had expectations that this team would do good. You still have some people kind of holding on to Arthur Smith. I heard one guy's take that was just absolutely fucking ridiculous. Where he talked about there was no guarantee that we would have we would have made the playoffs even if we won 8 to 10 games. And I'm stopping and I'm listening to him talk. I'm like, bro, do you realize Tampa won the division only winning 9? So if we would have won 10 games, we would have been in the playoffs. He talked about how he didn't understand how the expectation was playoffs. Yeah, man, some people just like to be contrarians just to be contrarians, fam. At the end of the day, this is business. And I'm pretty sure the front office, because they know what the books look like. They know what attendance is looking like. They know what sales are looking like. They know who's showing up to the games, who's not showing up to the games. They have ears on the streets to see where the fan base's pulse is. Nobody, I don't care what spectrum you are as a fan. Nobody was satisfied with the way this team performed. It was, man, some of these games were downright unbearable to watch, including yesterday. It was unbearable, some of these games. You can't put product like that out on the street, fam. You can't. Maddie says, if you're the new GM, do you trade up into top 3 or stay at 8? Here's the thing. We got time to make that decision. It depends on a couple of things. One, I got to know who's available. I keep saying this. We have to know who's available. Reason why I say that is because Russell Wilson a couple of weeks ago wasn't even on anybody's radar until he got benched. Then he became available. The exact same time, there were talks about Mike Tomlin probably not being in Pittsburgh. And then they made the playoffs. So he might not be available. So for me, it's all about who we hire as a coach. Are we making a play at one of these quarterbacks that hits free agency? Are we making a play to trade for somebody like a Justin Fields? Something like that. So until I know for sure what direction we're heading, if we're trying to gun for a quarterback in the draft, you do what you got to do. I'm always you go get your guy. Picks be damned. You go get your guy. The Rams proved that. The window they had, they said, fuck them picks. And what came out of that? A championship. That's kind of where I'm at. Fuck them picks. You go get who you think will make this team better. Dave says, Mark, how often will we hear from you this offseason? I cannot take the NBA right now because the Hawks stink. Man, I'm probably gonna take a little break because when the season's over, my season is effectively over, to be honest. But I will be on here. I will be on here periodically talking about the team. And any moves that we make, because I'm pretty sure this offseason is probably going to be wilder than it was last year, because we have to get a new head coach. We have to get a quarterback. We got draft capital. We have salary cap capital. So Atlanta's in a good position this offseason also. I still, man, I do feel a way. I do feel a way about Arthur Blank and Rich McKay leading the charge for the head coach with input from Terry Fontenot. Because if you look at the last 3 guys we've hired, look at what they specialized in. Mike Smith, defense. Defense was rarely in the top 10. Dan Quinn, defense. One of those years, he had a top 10 defense. That was in 2017. When we went to the Super Bowl in 2016, our defense was ranked 27th. And then when he was fired, we were dead last. You look at Arthur Smith. His first year, our offensive ranking was 26th. Then it jumped up to 15th with Marcus Mariota behind the wheel. Then when you have all these weapons, guess where you end up again? 26th. And this is supposed to be where they specialize, the side of the ball they specialize. And what we come to find out is Dan Quinn wasn't that great of a defensive coordinator here. Matter of fact, Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich were better coordinators than he was. And that's what he was hired to do. Mike Smith, same way. Now we see what happened with Arthur Smith. So that is a tad bit concerning to me, even though I will give Mike Smith and Dan Quinn credit. We made the playoffs with them. With one of them, we made the Super Bowl. With the other guy, we had two 13-win seasons. NFC Championship game, which we lost to the 49ers. Smith, 7 wins each season. Buddy didn't even get to 8. And the thing is, we have fam, I will keep saying this until the cows come home. Boy, if you get that head coaching position, that offensive coordinator position, and that quarterback position straight, this team is winning 11, 12 games next year. Hold on, fam. Hold on. They're starting the press conference. All right. Let me stop my music.
Take any questions you all have for as long as you want to chat. So, number one, I want to thank you for a couple of things. Thank you for being here.
Let me know if y'all can hear it.
On a really busy day. Also want to take a minute, and as many media friends we have here in the audience, we want to thank you for your support for the NFL, for our franchise. For
are y'all able to hear Blank talk?
The story to our fans throughout the year, throughout the years. So I always want to appreciation for that. It's very sincere. Without the media, it's important for us to get our messages across to the fans, and it's important for the fans to hear from you as you see our results and interpret our results. And so you are our partners. So thank you very much for that. These kind of decisions are never easy. And particularly when you look at the personal side of things, and with the coaches that I've been connected with and Rich over a longer period of time than myself, my 22 years as your owner, it's very painful when you have to make a change like this. There's a professional side of it and there's a personal side of it. So the personal side of it, look at someone like Coach Smith, similar to Mike Smith, similar to Dan Quinn, similar to, other folks we've had relationships with. This is an extraordinary human being coming from an extraordinary family. A really great person, great leader of men, great family guy.
I have no idea where Terry Fontenot is, fam.
A man who's committed to the NFL, a man who's had a rich history in sports, who's had many options in his life, but has chosen to pursue being a professional coach. And he's had a great track record for a relatively long period of time, given his age. So we have nothing but appreciation for Arthur and everything he brought to us and his efforts and his commitment by his family as well. However, at some point in time, we have to separate our personal respect, affection for the head coach in this case versus results. And there's no question that over the last 3 years, that our results have not been what I've committed to our franchise, which has been championships and being competitive at the highest possible levels that we could achieve. We haven't done that for 3 years. There's lots of subplots, sub-stories, which we could spend hours talking about, and most everybody in this room has either verbally expressed views on or written about, et cetera. So we could debate some of those things or discuss some of those things, but we are where we are. Search is underway. It'll be co-chaired, co-led by myself and Rich, who's our CEO of the AMBSE, and obviously got a long storied history as a general manager and senior football person, not only for the Atlanta Falcons, but really for the National Football League as well. At the end of the day, I understand the final decision will be mine, but mine will be in collaboration with, with others. As I said initially, we've kind of begun the process, if you will. It doesn't take long to get going. So we're moving. But I also want to be clear on this, is that there is no timetable. The only timetable is to do this correctly, take our time, be thoughtful, do all the interviews, be respectful, make sure we have a full, diverse slate of candidates that we're considering in every way, and give each and every one of them an opportunity to express their vision for our football team, for our franchise, for the roster, and where we are and where we expect to go. We'll take as much time as we need to do that and do it correctly. So that means and I think it's a good thing, as Rich and I have chatted about this more than once, and I serve on the DEI committee for the NFL and have been involved in a number of these changes. The NFL, by design, has kind of slowed the process down. There's multiple teams that are in playoffs now, that there's different rules about when you can talk to each person, rules when they can talk to them on the way to the bathroom, on the way from the bathroom. I mean, it's like a million different rules you have to pay a tremendous amount of attention to.
Man, these owners don't pay attention to them rules at all.
They're very serious and very well thought out to make sure the coaches are respected, their teams are respected, and their efforts being where they are fully respected as well. And to make sure that all candidates getting a fair opportunity to compete for these unique opportunities. So we will pay all attention to those rules. We did last time, 2001. I think our search process that we went through with Coach Smith was widely saluted and supported at the league level as being kind of a model as to what they would like to see clubs do. I think we did it well. We certainly had hard factual reasons why we selected Coach Smith. So we will take our time and do it as well. So I am reminded as one story, I still remember this with Ambassador Rooney, who's passed away now, Art Rooney's father, Dan Rooney, when we were doing a coach search 17 years ago. And he called me out of the blue and said, I just want you to feel, because we were way down the road and we hadn't selected a coach yet, and either had he. He said, just, take your time, do this correctly. You're going to hear it. You can't hire coordinators. You can't hire position coaches. Hire a head coach immediately, et cetera. He said, and they had taken forever. And the guy they selected was Mike Tomlin. So Mike has obviously been a very successful head coach for them for 17 years, but I still remember that. So I said this to Rich last night, and I would say it to myself. Everybody needs to breathe, including everybody in this room, and our fans need to as well. Understand that we are all entitled to a good cry, whether it be in a literal sense or emotionally. I get that. But nobody up here, nobody connected to our organization has anything else but a full commitment to getting us to the next level, getting us to a championship level, getting us to where we have committed to our fan base that we wanted to be, and that's having an extraordinarily competitive team. So we'll do everything we can to invest in that. As always, we'll put all resources on the table. We have an incredible stadium. We have an incredible fan base that for the last couple of years have been voted number one in fan experience in the NFL in terms of the environment we've created. We want to make sure that we thank the people in the stadium, but we mostly thank our fans who have brought that energy to the building, despite results that have been something less than they wanted to see and that we wanted to see. But I salute them and attribute a lot of that success to them. So with that, let me flip it over to Rich, and then we'll take as many questions as you all have. We're not in any rush. You be thoughtful about your questions, and outside of my golf game, any question is fair. So I'll refer my golf question to either Rich or Zach, to you, either one of the two of you. Mr. McKay?
Yes, sir. So for me, it's a hard day. I'm the son of a coach, so I know the impact of decisions like this and what they mean. They mean to the families, to all the people that are associated with, trying to get us to the championship level. It's a very tough moment. Let me say to Arthur Smith and to what he did for us. When he came in with he and Terry in 21, we were in a situation where the franchise had some veteran players that were on veteran contracts with a very, very challenged salary cap. And I give credit to both, Terry and Arthur in that, they spent 2 years retooling our roster fixing our salary cap, which really wasn't the function of mismanagement before, but a function of trying to keep a veteran team and taking a chance to win a championship, and then having COVID come in and have the salary cap go down, which really kind of caught us. But that said, I give them a tremendous amount of credit. Arthur is a great human being, a very collaborative head football coach, gave great vision to our scouting department, and I think that allowed the retooling of the roster where I think we're in a good place. We intend to win and compete at the highest levels in 2024. One of the reasons we made this move is that reason. And part of the reason we think we can do that is the work that Arthur and his staff did, as did Terry and his staff. It was not easy.
I wonder what Arthur Blank
This year,
just wrote.
we did not achieve what we wanted to achieve.
And look at where he put that
and
piece of
there
paper
are
at.
many factors around it. But for us, we have to look at the fans and say, are we in a place where we think we can compete for a championship? And are we going to be too patient or not? And in this case, we felt like the change was necessary to make sure that we compete in 24 at the highest level. So I have a really good, I've enjoyed my professional and personal relationship with Arthur. He did, as Arthur Blank just noted, he started at the ground up. I mean, he was a GA or below GA that worked his way all the way up to being a head football coach. And he's a very respectful, very good guy in the building, very good relationship with his players. But we need to always hold ourselves accountable to our fans. And we need to try to put ourselves in a position to compete for championships. And that's why we made this decision at this time.
Let me, there's two other comments I want to add on. One Rich alluded to, I want to be really clear on this. We've been around situations where the coach has lost, quote, the locker room. You've heard that, seen it, maybe experienced it here, maybe elsewhere, you've read about it. So this coach never lost a locker room. I want to be clear on that. And it's a great credit to him, the other coaches, but it's also a tremendous credit to the players, to the leadership that we have on this roster, in that locker room, that the last play to the last day, they were fighting. So I want to give them credit. And our allegiance, our alliance, Rich alluded to, is to our fan base, but it's also to the players. It's the players. It's not about
they are
financial
giving
relationship
these two
between
that
us and
straight
players,
work in
but
the
we owe it
comments
to the
section.
players to make certain that, given their commitment to the game, emotionally, physically, energy, passion, everything
What's
that
up, Ray?
they do professionally, that we're giving them the best opportunity to win. And if it's anything less than that in any way, then we have to address that ourselves. So, part of this is to honor our fan base, but part of it is to honor our players and make sure that they know that we will do anything and everything we can to give them the best opportunity to perform at the level that they need to perform to give us a chance to have championships in Atlanta. So salute to the players, and salute to Arthur and his coaching staff for building that relationship with the players. It's very impressive. Not just a handful of players, a number have spoken out on his behalf, which is all accurate and honest and attributable to themselves. They weren't, positioned to speak up. They just spoke from their hearts. So,
Kevin, they say he's in Texas. He's watching one of the games tonight, or watching the game tonight.
Let's take questions. David Bassett, you all know, will kind of chair the questions, and DL, as usual, first question.
Yes.
As it should be.
Thank you, sir. Arthur and Rich, could you all shed some light and discuss how the meeting went last night, and then if there'll be some parameters on the coaching search with the landscape that's out there now and available candidates?
Let me speak to the meeting last night. I think we met for, I don't know, probably a few hours, maybe a little bit longer than that. And we had a very respectful, thoughtful discussion about the last 3 years, about each of the 3 years, about where we were as an organization, as a franchise, where the roster was. We talked about considerations that were on the table, and just felt at the end of the day, and we spent some quiet time after we finished with Coach Smith deciding that the right decision, all things considered, that we needed to move forward. But it was very, like every meeting we've had with Coach Smith for the last 3 years has always been thoughtful, smart as heck, caring, kind, cares about the game, cares about winning, cares about the players, cares about our franchise, cares about Atlanta. That's kind of the tone of the meeting. I'll let Rich talk about the other.
I mean, as typical, Arthur Smith, he's very well organized, very well prepared. It was a great, really good discussion under emotional circumstances after a game and an end of a season. But it was very productive, and it was the right thing for us to have that exchange. And I was proud of him the way he handled it, and as he does almost all of that.
It's hard not to notice that Terry Fontenot isn't here. A couple different branches on that. First, what's his role right now with the organization? Because it seemed like Arthur Smith and Fontenot had a 50-50 split on decision-making. And why is he not kind of up here, I guess, as part of this process, considering he's still your general manager, if he is still your general manager?
So Terry actually is here. So are a ton of other staff people that'll be heavily involved in the search. And heavily involved in the decision as we go forward. Because they're physically not here doesn't mean they're not very well represented here. Terry was aware of the process we were going through. We sought out Terry's opinion of other senior people in our organization as well. So he's done an excellent job as our general manager. Our drafts 2001, 2, and 3, 21, 22, 23 have been good. Some have been a little better than others. Certainly a free agency. The investments we've made this year on the pro side of the ball have been outstanding in my view. Serious investments, serious returns we've gotten from them. But Terry is our general manager and will be heavily involved in the process going forward, as will some other key people that we depend on in terms of their football operations and football knowledge. Rich, you want to?
Yeah, I would say, Michael, today, did I meet with Terry 25 times? Yes, probably. Yeah, he's doing a lot of work. The search, listen, we've got a lot to organize, and he and his people have to organize it. Arthur's committee that he makes light of, the DE&I committee that added just a few regulations, it's about a 25-page book that you've got to make sure that you comply with in the processes. And Terry and his group are going to go through all of that, go through all of the candidates, go through all of the research. They'll be sitting right at the table. So there's just a lot of work to be done.
The other thing I would add to that, Michael, is that I'm being facetious. I mean, Terry actually is here with us. I mean, he's not physically here with us, but if you were up at Flowery Branch today, you've got every single coach and staff person is concerned about, what does this mean for me? What does it mean for my family? What does it mean for my children? We're already getting requests on, can I talk to this coach, et cetera. So, this is I'm say a battle. It's not a battle, but it's a challenge that has to be met on a number of fronts. So he's dealing with one front up there. Rich was up there early today. I probably spoke to Terry 4 times myself today. So don't read anything into him not being here as other than he's our partner. He's our general manager. He will definitely be part of this process as we go forward. And we appreciate the work that he and his personnel department have done in the last 3 years. Most people in this room and most people around the NFL would generally say that, we've got a pretty darn good roster in a lot of areas, always room for improvement. But
somebody commented and said Terry was a healthy scratch.
Roster, so I give them credit for that, and with their whole staffs.
Yeah, I think the structure, the intended structure would be that, Michael. It wouldn't be different than it is now between the head coach and the GM, depending upon who the head coach is. And that I think one thing we're going to be very committed to is, the head coach could be one that has head coaching experience, could be, there's not going to be a definition of of this, head coach, it's going to be left to the best candidate. Terry will play a part in that selection process for sure, a central part, and then we'll determine exactly how you do it between the coach and the general manager. What we did before is kind of the way a lot of teams are doing it, which is 50-50, kind of one's got the draft and one's got free agency, one's got the 53. There's a lot of ways to look at that between the GM and the coach, but Terry will be at that table.
Yeah, he'll be incredibly involved. The only thing I would say to add on to what Rich said as well is that we made a study in 2002 before Rich was with us, which is hard to believe because it's been 20 years, I think, right, Rich?
20, yeah.
But I was really interested when I became an owner in 2001, and we did this in 2002 with actually a GM that used to work for Rich in Tampa, helped do the study. The history of the NFL, what were the attributes that made teams really successful over a long period of time? So the short and long answer to your question, Michael, is that you need a general manager and a head coach that have the same vision for the football team the same way. How you distribute it, if it comes down to power, you're in a bad place. The word power should never come into play. It shouldn't be measured necessarily. I do sort of believe in the Bill Parcells philosophy is that you're asking the coach to produce the wins and be responsible for the team record, et cetera. At the end of the day is that, you've got to let them partially or significantly be responsible for helping, prepare the recipe for the recipes that are going to require shopping and what have you for players. And if you ask Terry back the other day, he just gave me the same analogy. He said, my job is to help fill requirements that the coach and coaching staff believe we need to build a winning roster. So, so we're looking for collaboration. There has to be collaboration between a general manager and a head coach. Has to be respect, not always agreement. Agreement is not always a good thing. A respectful disagreement is important in any institution, any organization, et cetera. So you want everybody to speak their minds. You want everybody to be listened to. At the end of the day, hopefully you'll have the same vision and same focus. You'll be able to come to decisions that collaterally everybody agrees to. Collaboratively, I should say.
How do you guys feel about knowing you're not going to please everybody all the time? Certain members of the fan base feeling that the structure for the coaching search should be different. Maybe different people, different voices need to be heard more so this time around.
Well, there are different voices that will be heard, right? Obviously, we have a different general manager now that we didn't have last time. We have different personnel people that will be in it. We haven't decided on a search firm, whether we'll use one and who it'll be, but we very well may. And that gives you a different perspective. I think, Nick, it looks totally different today than it looked, 10 years ago in head coaching searches, in that the process is so much slower. There's so much more time for research. There's so much more time for collaboration between a bunch of people to be able to get to an idea and a decision, that I think that I hear them. I would say that, in Arthur's time, as an owner, he's hired, I guess, 5 head coaches, 3 of which have winning records, 2 of which don't, 1 of which I can't sleep at night because he got hired. I don't need to tell you who that is. But those 3 coaches with winning records were good football coaches. 2 went to the NFC Championship. One won an NFC Championship and went to the Super Bowl. So, but the process has changed. And to your point, you need more people in it. There needs to be more discussion about it. And I think having Terry and his personnel staff, which now have a pretty good sense of our roster and what the vision was for the roster, will help us as we begin to talk to coaches.
No. The other thing I would say, Nick, I don't think there's anything wrong with the pickers. And I don't say that defensively at all as me being, one of the pickers. But Rich said it. I go back and look at our coaches that we selected, starting with Coach Moore, Bobby Petrino, probably who Rich referred to.
Maybe.
Coach Quinn, Coach Smith, all incredible human beings, great leaders, but also put up records that were important for us. The winning most coach in the history of the franchise, the coach who took us to the Super Bowl. I mean, I can go on and on. So our coaching selections, I think, have been good. And I wouldn't argue that Coach Smith was a bad selection based on the information that we had, based on his record in Tennessee. Personally, leadership-wise, leader of men, et cetera, scale of 1 to 10, somewhere between a 20 and a 30. Just an outstanding human being. Why his offensive record at Tennessee didn't translate here over a 3-year period. There's lots of stages to that, lots of phases to that, and understand it. But that's a question. So I think that in every case, I would say this, that we get a greater understanding of what it takes to be a successful head coach in the National Football League. And the challenges over time have changed. Years ago, and Rich could remember this, when I remembered buying the Falcons in 2001, we had one person in the marketing department, one person. There was one person, senior officer, and an EA. That was it. Today, how many do we have today?
Too many?
It was not too many.
Yeah,
How many is it
I'm going to
today? It's not
say
too
we've
many.
got to have 35,
Yeah.
40.
Yeah, but the business of the NFL and the business of being a head coach has changed. The number of people involved in media today, the channels of media today, the streaming, the distribution, the requirements on the head coach today are dramatically different and much more intense in a broader way than they've ever been before. Way back when Nick, you had hair and Rich had hair. I mean,
A long time ago.
a long
Nick.
time ago. But head football coach, the responsibility was this. Today, it's much broader, and so you have to, figure out how do you keep these distractions away from a head coach so they can focus on really what they're paid to do, which is to win games and win championships for the franchise. So I think we continue to garner more knowledge and become wiser.
Yeah. Hey guys, over here.
I'm sorry.
So in trying to understand or let the fans understand when this decision was made to fire Arthur Smith, you talked about a 2-hour meeting last night where he came in. Sounds like it was a back and forth conversation, almost like maybe he was lobbying to keep his job. Then you talked about separating afterwards from him, and then you decided to make the decision. So does that suggest that you had not decided to fire Arthur Smith right away? Was there a process a few games ago where you started to think about it? And as of last night, does that mean that was a conversation about how you could possibly keep him? And at the end of it, then you made the decision. How did it play out? I guess I didn't understand totally.
Yeah. I would say, number one, Steak, you probably spend too much time watching serial stuff on TV. But beside that, all that, I don't think you come to a decision on this. Speaking for me, Rich can talk for himself. But it's not, obviously it's not a snap decision. It's one that you continue to ruminate on as the season goes on. You absorb things, you see things. How are we doing? How are we responding? What's our record against winning teams? What's our record against losing teams? Our record against losing teams this year was abysmal, honestly. And coach would be the first to say that. Lots of reasons, but we lost a bunch of games we probably should not have lost or didn't have to lose, if you will. So, I don't think it was any one thing. And it was not like one point in time where you press a button and decide. At the end of the day, you have to do that. And we did it last night. But, we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to, in a quiet way, several hours after the game, et cetera, to make sure we had a chance to listen to Coach Smith. We had a chance to share with him our observations and our feelings and why we felt the way we did. I think it's just a result of that, of that process. You get to a point where you feel, and I've said this to several of the people, including Rich, I think, last night, is that, I feel pained by the decision personally, but I actually feel at peace, truly at peace about making a decision on behalf of the franchise, on behalf of our fans, on behalf of ultimately our players, not just because of their personal devotion to him, but actually thinking about the future and our responsibility to give them the best environment to create a winning championship team. So it's not one one particular moment in time. It's just kind of a growing equation that you go through and you go through and you balance and you rebalance and you balance and you think about. You sleep over, you try to make up the sleep, doesn't work out well, but eventually you come to that decision. And then on your other side of the decision, do you feel at peace about it or don't you? And I feel completely at peace about the decision. Not for myself personally, yes, but beyond that, really for our fan base and for the people that we're connected to.
I want to go back to why Terry's physically not in the room with you here, because, I mean, gentlemen, look, words have to match actions, and optically, you have to understand what it says to everybody in this room and the fan base that Terry isn't here to answer the question.
Exactly.
Given the press release last night where he has just input, if he's not the driving force behind hiring and firing, then it's fair to ask if his role is just somebody of a scout or player person or personnel director. I mean, the idea that he's not here doesn't sell it to many of us in this room and the fan base that Terry has authority to really pick his next head coach, which he didn't get the first time either.
Fucking question.
Well, let me just
Today.
answer the first thing. Rich gave you the real answer, but he actually did have an opportunity the first time. Just to be clear, and you may not know the facts, so let me just. Terry did not know Coach Smith at all. And we actually interviewed Coach Smith first before Terry Fontenot ever met him. We hired Terry, and then Terry helped participate in all the coaching interviews that we did at that time, including Coach Smith. So they had no prior connection, et cetera, and he was involved in that, et cetera. Not solely, obviously, but he was part of the team that helped make that decision. So we have nothing but respect for Terry personally as well as professionally, and the staff that he's put together. So I want to just be clear on that. So, I mean, we can't have everybody here that we all have roles to do. I mean, if you were at Flowery Branch today, it's a version of a personal, difficult circus up there today. So he's holding that fort down. Rich was up there this morning, and he's dealing with coaches, their concerns, their families, everything going on that's up there, which is very significant. It's not a handful of people. There's a ton of people in that building that we got to be thoughtful about. And I'm blessed having him there dealing with that while we're down here dealing with this. So, Rich, do you want to?
Yeah, the other thing I would say to your question, fine question, but Arthur Smith did not report to Terry, and we didn't set it up that way. We didn't want it that way. We wanted a partnership where there could be a shared vision and get us what we thought we needed on the personnel side, and I think we achieved it. We're definitely in a better place than we were 3 years ago based on their collaboration. Today, as we see it, we see the same setup. We don't see the coach reporting to Terry. But Terry will have that same role as being in charge of personnel. So the idea was, and Michael asked the question, will it be a 50-50? That's our thought going in. Could change, but please don't take it that somehow Terry's role would be diminished. In no way, shape, or form would his role be diminished. His role has still been to run the personnel department, which I think the record speaks for itself. And it's been
These
pretty
gentlemen,
good.
they both, if you look at a traditional table of organization, they both report to Rich McKay. And that we've been clear about that. So that hasn't changed. And
That's
kind of
part
Rich
of the problem
represents
right there.
Terry up here today. Again, we're trying to divide and conquer, and just be respectful of that we're trying to, it's nothing to do with Terry. I mean, honestly, personally. And I would just share again, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but if you end up with a debate between a coach and a general manager, who's got the 46, who's got the 53, who's got the plus 16, who's got this, who's got that, you really don't have the kind of collaboration. Forget about, in my experience, business-wise or football-wise, but throughout the NFL and the history of the NFL, you really don't want to have that kind of measured, this kind of relationship. You want this kind of relationship between a coach and a general manager. If they don't see the world basically the same way, the world is round, not flat, agree upon the number of oceans, the number of continents, et cetera, they're going to have different opinions about different things, and that's okay. That's healthy in every organization, truly. But honestly, you really want them to be, having that kind of just free-flowing relationship, respectful relationship. And that's what we did have with Coach Smith. And I would say that's what Thomas had with Mike Smith, and Thomas had with Coach Quinn as well. So we'll continue to seek that. it's really not, it's not this or this, it's really more this. How do you work together with the same vision for the franchise?
And one more point I would make too is that when we made the change with Mike Smith, who had been incredibly successful, we chose to keep Thomas Dimitrov and keep him as the general manager.
Mhm.
And then we hired Dan Quinn. We didn't have Dan report to Thomas. We set them up together. We did that with the idea that we thought that'd give us the best chance to win right away. And 2 years later, we were in the Super Bowl. We felt like that did serve us well because it didn't start with two new people in powerful positions, completely re-examining the roster and doing some things that maybe go backwards before we go forward. So that was kind of our thinking then, and it's not too dissimilar to now.
Y'all
Yeah,
gotta
that's
change
a
y'all
really good
thinking.
point. And I think, every head coach is going to have a little
Terrible
different
way to
perspective on the roster. I
go
mean,
along with the
we
process.
may grade every player or certain players at A's or B's, and they may grade them at a B versus an A. So, I mean, that input's going to be important from whoever the new head coach is. But it's also important in terms of personnel to have that kind of connection so you understand the history and actually share the experience of how this player has
Wow.
played over time, what their transition has been into the league, how coachable are they, have they performed at this level. All of that, Terry and his staff, and it's really his staff as well, are able to help work productively with a new head coach to get the kind of results we're looking for sooner, as Rich said, rather than later, as I think we went through with Thomas and Coach Quinn.
You guys mentioned the first 2 years here, basically complete roster turnover, all the cap issues you had. One can make the argument that 7 wins, he overachieved with that issue at hand. You mentioned he didn't lose the locker room. So was his downfall putting all his eggs in the Desmond Ridder basket? Or at one point, did he ask to get another quarterback? And if so, who prevented that?
So let's go to the quarterback discussion. I would say no. I know of no discussion where there was, a quote, ask for another quarterback. I would assure you that Terry and Arthur talked through a lot with respect to the quarterback position, whether it be draft or whether it be veteran free agent or trade. And I could be wrong, but I know of nothing that I'm sure they might have talked about it over a beer, but I know nothing that got to a formal discussion point. I think the idea with Desmond was they drafted Desmond 3rd round. They had seen him. They liked what they saw. They saw the progress during all the practices during the 22 season, played 4 games, and they made the decision that was the best path to try to win this year. It didn't work out for a number of reasons, but let's not just say it was Desmond. But I don't think there was a disagreement over the position. I think that they made most decisions. I mean, listen, they work together like GMs and coaches are supposed to work. We're not there. They're just off working it.
How?
And then they
You
come
just
back
said the
report on
coach
what they're
doesn't
gonna
have to
do, but I
report to the
felt like their
fucking GM.
relationship, their communication, and their results were pretty good.
Man.
And to me, this is a unique situation for me because in many of these, you hear this phrase, direction, right? Oh, we got to change direction. That's a classic phrase in a situation like this. I think we like the direction of the team and of the franchise, but I think we need results, and we need results sooner rather than later. And we felt like that was what we needed. That's what we needed to do right now to make that happen.
Zach, let me add on to a little bit what Rich, just to kind of reinforce Rich said. Now, I would take it a step further. There was never capital NEVER is still, I think I could still spell, at least that word I can.
I think you're right.
There was never any discussion about any other quarterback path other than one that Coach Smith and Terry and we supported, but they chose to take. And this is not to defend either Taylor or Dez, but our quarterback play this year was clearly deficient. But quarterback play includes, scheme, play calling, other players. There's a lot of things that go into what makes a quarterback successful or not, and how you transition a quarterback into the NFL with the level of complexity of plays you put in front of them, and whether it matches where they are in their career path. There's a million things that go into it. That's all what I'm going to suggest is that, you know, I've learned a lot in 22 years, and that's one of the things. So it's not just the player. It's the coach, the coaching. Many of these young men today in all positions come in the NFL today. They are diamonds in the rough, but they need to be polished and polished by a great coaching staff. So, I mean, Desmond, I'd say Desmond would say the same thing. Taylor would say the same thing. Wasn't the kind of years that they hope to have personally, obviously for the club as well. They'll continue to work on their crafts and continue to get better. And who knows what the future will hold for Desmond. Bright young man, committed, team leader, athletic. Obviously not the kind of year that he wanted, not the kind of year we wanted. And Taylor Heineke had a different track record elsewhere and played through a number of injuries this year. And so we'll see. But I mean, I know that I did, and I know that Mr. McKay did as well, that any option that the coach ever wanted relative to whether it be quarterback or any other position was completely supported by all of us 1,000%, 1,000%, without any equivocation.
Gentlemen.
Jared, how are you? Good to see you
Pretty
again.
good. Good to see you too, Arthur.
Thank you.
Wondering how much weight you will put on previous head coaching experience. And, you know, Rich just talked about needing to, you know, to win sooner rather than later. You talked about, Arthur, the demands on the head coach and how it's changed. Given the fact that you've never hired a head coach, a coach with head coaching experience, NFL head coaching experience outside of Petrino, does that change now?
Yeah, so I would say, Jared, that for me, you know, I think I've hired two coaches in Tampa, and then I've been part of the ones here. I think I would say that I am inclined to say that the where you look should be incredibly broad, and it should include head coaching experience. And I think there is something to head coaching experience, but it's got to be the right head coaching experience, and that is not so easy to find because it's not been easy for me to find over the years. But I think if you find one and you should consider it, absolutely. Why wouldn't you? But I think also you have to, on the coordinator side, you just have to take your time and make sure that you're paying attention to what is their experience, how many years have they been a coordinator. There's a lot of studies that have been done on that, and I think you need to pay attention to that. So I'm not going to sit here and say that you shouldn't have a prior head coach, but I wouldn't also say that you have to be, you know, biased towards it. I think you just got to take your – I think the one thing that I knew back when I first started in this league was this process used to be a race. That's what it used to be. It was a race. And all you did was get on the phone and race, and you pulled the trigger. You might have interviewed him for an hour, but you were scared. That is no longer the case. And therefore, to me, it makes it way better to do just what you described, which is bring all the candidates in, former head coaches and current coordinators, and let them, you know, have an opportunity to speak and talk to you about your football team.
Jared, I would add on, you know, I know you've been around the league and around the game longer than I've been. I don't know how many years, but very long storied career as a reporter and a journalist. Don't want to, you know, salute you for that. I do think today being a head coach in the NFL is more demanding and more complex. Players, I think, are you know, coming into the NFL with a different set of life experiences today, often expectations. And so I think a head coach has to, part of his job is to, you know, sometimes be a psychologist along with everything else, putting a team together with the right kind of chemistry. So I think you either have to working with coordinators and bringing them in. There are examples of coordinators like, you know, Sean McVay or play calling, or Kyle Shanahan obviously was part of our franchise and great success here and moved on, obviously even greater success elsewhere. But those are both play callers, but they've surrounded themselves with a structure that allows them to either get enough coaching on the other side of the ball or enough support in their role as a head coach where they can maintain the focus on the football side of the business the way they have to. So I think, if you bring in a coordinator today, I think any coordinator would say is that, I'm great at one side of the ball, the other side of the ball, but, I'm going to need some work to help frame out my job as a head coach and to make sure that my time and attention gets balanced on both sides of the ball. Because, one side of the ball, the other side of the ball, they're both critical. There's no question the league is leaning more to an offensively minded play these days, with the number of points being scored versus in the past, et cetera. But, you got to have a great defense to be able to play competitively. We had a very good defense this year. Wasn't consistently great. It certainly had its moments of stress in the last 4 or 5 games. I think that Richard said, you want to cast the widest net you can. And then because of the process we go through today, for all the right reasons, slowing things down, Ambassador Rooney was right many years ago, 17 years ago, when he told me, breathe, take it easy. You'll find the right guy. And obviously he did, and I know we will too. And we have, just not somebody over that period of time. But, we want to make sure that whoever we bring in, we make sure that he has all of the tools in their toolbox that they need to be fully supported so they can be fully successful. It is a more demanding job, I think, than it was 20 years ago. Rich could speak to that. He would tell you about, I don't know, his dad. I don't know how his father would feel about that today. But I suspect, in many ways, even more demanding than when Coach McKay was at Tampa or, prior years at USC.
Does that mean that your philosophy has changed just in terms of how you weigh head coaching experience?
I say for me personally, I think it's a greater recognition, I think, and this gets back to the question that Nick or one of the gentlemen were asking before earlier, is that you refine as an owner. I think you refine your definition of what it's going to take to help a head coach become really fully successful. What is everything that we can do to give them the resources, and the resources is the culture, the environment, financial resources, all of those things, and to make sure they have all the piece parts that they need around them so they can produce the levels that represent the very best of them and represent the best for the franchise. And that will vary a little bit from person to person. So if you hire somebody who's got tons of experience as a head coach, they probably need less of that in certain areas because they have that experience. You hire somebody else, you're going to have to figure out, well, how do we make sure that they continue to stay focused on what got them here, which is, great football results, but how do we make sure they don't become diluted in terms of their results on the football field, and make sure they have everything else around them so they can be fully successful. And I do think that most coaches in the NFL would probably say their job compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago is more complicated today than it's been in the past. So we need to recognize that and fill in the blanks for them, help them.
Was it a mistake not to pursue Lamar Jackson?
Was it a mistake to not pursue him? You asking me? I'll give him. Yeah. I don't think so. I think that. It's easy to say yes. Looking given his year, he's obviously an incredible player. We did not have the cap space. I think the coaching staff felt, coaching personnel, all of us felt collectively, but certainly Coach and Terry, that we felt we had an answer in Ritter, a younger player without, that kind of contract that would have kept us from actually building the team we wanted to build. What's happened to us too often in the past, Josh, and you've seen this, and many people in this room can remember players that we've drafted well, brought them along, got to year 4, year 5, we had to let them go because we didn't have the cap space. It's not a question of cash, didn't have the cap space, so we had to let players go. That's not a good formula. We want to be able to raise our own children and keep our own children as best we can. So I think, the result of that thinking was that let's stay the course. Let's continue to pursue the vision that we have now, continue to build a roster, build this foundation offensively and defensively, and go from there. It's not a criticism of Lamar. You know, you can debate whether or not he would have really been available or not. You know, who knows whether they would have matched whatever offers are on the table. I don't know that. I'm not sure, but certainly a great player.
He should have stopped
Had a
that.
great
He
year.
should have just stopped with we didn't have the cap space.
Rich, to
Honestly.
use, not to ask you to
You
repeat
wanna
Mr.
add
Blank,
something
but,
to that, Rich? I mean,
but did, in using your words and things that reached or did not reach the level of formal discussion, did that question ever reach the level of formal discussion, or was it? or
Well,
no?
we're in cap rehab, and we were coming out of cap rehab, and we felt good about where the cap rehab was going. I think anytime you talk about, and I don't like to talk about specific players on other teams, that does tend to get you in a little trouble. But anytime you're dealing with a restricted free agent, which is that's what a tender does, you have to also decide, is there a chance this player is going to come or not? Because ultimately you don't get to make that decision. The home team does. And so I would say in players like the one you described, I think the internal answer was no. And so I've been down that path. I did a restricted free agent one of my first years in the league, did Neil O'Donnell, knew we had him. We were so excited. We were ready for the press conference. And I think at 11:58, they matched the offer and the Steelers kept him. So I think that discussion was had, but I would say that I think that was what the answer was.
Yeah, about, I guess, maybe a year and a half ago now, you guys pursued Deshaun Watson, and that led to the, yeah, about a year and a half ago now, you guys pursued Deshaun Watson. That eventually led to the trade of Matt Ryan, and then put you guys in a different maybe quarterback situation than maybe you would have been otherwise. Looking back now, who was the driving force behind making that Watson pursuit? And you
Boy,
look
they
back
are
now
going
and
for
say
the
maybe
jugular
that
right now.
kind of messed up the plan that they might have had all along, or with Arthur and Terry.
I mean, I'm happy to answer. And Rich can answer as well. I think the decision at the time to pursue Deshaun to the extent that we did was a collaborative decision. Collaborative, just the way we're going to be making the next decision about the next head coach. There'll be a number of people involved in that. We pursued it to a point, and at some point it didn't make sense for us, and so we became just an observer.
Oh, bullshit.
So I think that Matt. We start out by saying this, and Rich and I have talked about this. I mean, Matt, he's certainly going to end up in our Ring of Honor, whether he ends up in the National Football League Hall of Fame. He's certainly one of the greatest players and greatest quarterbacks we've ever had in our history. We had an incredible 14 years with Matt. I think we had collectively continued to, push that ball down the field as an organization, whether it be with Matt and others, had continued to try to look for that last piece or two and get us over the hump, et cetera. And I think unfortunately it got to us a point where the salary cap situation was so, so burdensome that we couldn't build the kind of franchise, the kind of roster that we needed to have going forward. And it's not a criticism of anybody. It's just a reality of the National Football League. So at some point you have to decide, should we move on and try to do a reset and have another 14-year run with another version of Matt Ryan, which is, incredibly difficult to duplicate because he's a special player, special human being, and a special player as well. So I don't think, looking back at that decision, I don't think, even looking back with, with hindsight, I don't think we would have done anything any differently at that time. It was not a long discussion we had about Deshaun. Went through a little bit of the process with him.
Wow.
Then, we decided for a lot of reasons that we didn't want to continue to pursue him.
Wow.
Do you want to add to that, Rich?
Now, listen, Matt Ryan is one of my favorite people in life and one of the greatest players that ever played for the franchise. Will definitely be in the Ring of Honor whenever he's ready.
If they were only spectators in the Deshaun Watson situation, why did Matt Ryan demand a goddamn trade?
Franchise quarterback. I understand it. We all sat in the room and talked about it. And it became apparent that it wasn't going to work for us. and the consequence of having Matt then move and go to Indianapolis, we understand it. Hate seeing him go anywhere else, but respect the hell out of Matt, the person and the player. And for us, we had to get the salary cap moving. It had to move because Matt was occupying, over 20-25% of our cap.
Y'all
And
gave
so
that to
was
him,
going
though.
to have to happen at some point.
And it had reached a point where, just remind everybody who may be aware of this or not, but I mean, last 20 years in the Super Bowl, there's never been a quarterback who's been more than 70% of a team's cap. And Matt was approaching close to 25% of ours. There's nothing to criticism of Matt. It's not a criticism of Thomas, not a criticism of our coaches involved in doing that, or Rich or myself, et cetera. We all signed up for it, and we were thankful, going back to 2008, when we drafted Matt, that he had an incredible career with us. But at some point, you have to make a transition. At some point, you're forced to make a transition, whether it's related to compensation or it's related to and/or performance. You have to make that judgment and move on. And teams have done it extraordinarily well over the years. You look at what's happened in Green Bay. They've moved on with from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, apparently Jordan Love is now playing at a very high level. Whether it'll be Aaron Rodgers or not, time will tell. But he's playing at a very high level as well. So that's ideal, and that's kind of the direction we hope to move in ourselves.
Matt, you guys were going to move on from. So just to be very clear, you guys were going to plan on moving on from Matt Ryan, regardless of Deshaun, based off of the way you guys talked about the salary cap, or
No.
Or so Matt could have been, if you guys had not, Matt could have been the quarterback last year.
Could have been, but there was going to be, that discussion was ongoing as to what the timing was going to be, because at some point you have to exercise the June 1 rule and put the dead money into the next year. And that, for us, it turned out that that's what we did. But no, I would not, I'm not trying to tie those two together.
Thank you. I don't know if it behooves anybody up there to say it or not, but with all the data points as wide a net as you're going to cast, all the lists, all the 20 plus years of experience you have, is it unfair for someone like me to say that hiring a head coach is nothing more than a crapshoot now? Or do you feel that's not the case?
Yeah, I would say,
I would, I would say the day it becomes a crapshoot is that I definitely don't think that I ought to be the owner of the franchise. I would take great exception to that on behalf of myself and behalf of everybody who's involved in the process. It's absolutely not a crapshoot. I don't think that Mike Smith was a crapshoot. Dan Quinn was not a crapshoot. Jim Moore, for a period of time, was not a crapshoot. Coach Smith, really, in fairness to him, year 1, year 2 was really not a crapshoot. It was highly, Arthur Smith, when we recruited him, was probably the most demanded, one of the most highly demanded coordinators that were available at the time. And his record in Tennessee was not good. It was impeccable. They led.
That was
they led the
Vrabel's
National
record.
Football League
That
2
was
years in a row
Vrabel's
in
record.
Red zone success and goal-to-goal success, et cetera. Not in the top quartile. They were number 1 and number 2, basically number 1. So it's far from a crapshoot. But you plan on certain things, and a lot of it depends on it's not just the head coach. It's who he's working with, the general manager, players. You make the right bets on the right players. Do you draft the right players? Do you invest wisely in free agency? Do those players return on their investment? There's a whole variety of things that come into play. Do you have injuries? Don't you have injuries? I mean, there's a million things that come into play. So it's absolutely not a crapshoot, and certainly not with this franchise. And I can't speak for every owner in the NFL, but I would say most of my partners in the NFL would feel the same way. But you can only measure it to a certain extent, and there's many factors then that come into play.
But I guess I'm looking at league-wide numbers of how many years guys are getting in these cycles. And if it's a 3-year turnaround league-wide, not just here, but is it something that with everything that it's almost like picking a quarterback. It seems that there are going to be factors that are going to come into play that make the cycle as vicious as it is.
well, there's no question that the National Football League is a highly competitive league. There's 32 teams, so we're going to have half of them, if not more, lose every year. And when they do, there are going to be people both internally and externally that begin to have that discussion. So I don't know that the patience level of franchises has changed that dramatically, but it probably has moved a little bit from the days of staying the course. But I don't think that teams take this decision lightly, and nobody does this for the press conference. There's nobody making a change like this that I know of for the press. They're making it because they want to win a championship and they want to change the course.
The other thing I would say is that this would be very true in all of my business experience, which goes back 60-odd years now, is that, and the NFL really is no different. This does require a degree of patience, which isn't always my longest suit because I represent an impatience inside for, results, productivity, et cetera, et cetera. And most everybody who works with me would say the same thing, and representing the fans in that regard as well, which is healthy. I'm not apologizing for that. That's the way I'm wired, and that's, and everyone understands that. Having said that, it does take time, particularly as you go through and trying to answer a little bit what Mike was asking and what Zach was answering. It takes a little bit of time because, this is not an open market. You have limitations called salary cap. I mean, and it's not a loose salary cap, it's a hard salary cap. So you have limitations on what you can do and how quickly that you can do it in. So it takes some time. It takes a degree of patience to build a roster, to bring in these young men, to make sure they're properly coached, to make sure that every box fits properly, square hole and square box and square hole, et cetera, et cetera. And that takes some time. And so you'd like to get immediate results all the time. Sometimes you can strike and it can happen. Usually it takes some time to go through a healthy transition. And so I agree with Rich. I'm putting a few more words on it, probably a little more excessively so, but you can't be impulsive about these changes. This is Coach Smith was with us almost 7 years. Coach Quinn was with us almost 6 years. I mean, you want to give these coaches time to do their job and working in conjunction with the general manager. Give them time to do it, and it does take time. So sometimes 2 or 3 years is not really sufficient. In this case, we felt, the evidence for us and the direction where the team was going, et cetera, that this was the right time. But I would not look at 3 years as being acceptable, normal, check that box. I don't think, I would say this for every organization in the NFL, that's not a desired outcome for sure.
Thanks, Bob. Brandon?
Arthur, this is for you and Rich. The things that have gone on for a while, and there's Arthur Blank, the benevolent businessman, man of the community, all the things you've done on the West Side and what you did to the Dome with your own funds and what you've done with Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But there's also Arthur Blank, the owner. And there have been 2 winning seasons in the last 11 years, and 3 of your coaches that you've hired have not made it past 3 seasons of coaching. How do you quell the angst of fans that say it's the same old thing with Rich McKay and Arthur Blank coming up at another press conference, and you quell the angst that this could be the time that you could get it right? Or better ask, maybe, how do you self-scout maybe some of the things you've done that you may do differently moving forward with this next coaching hire?
I think that's a very fair question. I think that I, spent a lot of time in reflection, and, you have someone like a Coach Quinn who's performed at extraordinarily high level as defensive coordinator of Seattle and again in Dallas, and kind of why didn't that translate here in Atlanta? Someone like Coach Smith performed at extraordinarily high level as an offensive coordinator in Tennessee. Why didn't it translate here on the offensive side of the ball? So you think about what, as an owner, you can do, but, my job is to, surround myself with the very best people like Rich McKay, Terry Fontenot, great coaches, the whole organization. And it's a whole organization that supports the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not talking about marketing wise or community wise, but just even the team. And we've got a world-class, first-class organization. And I think they'll bring the very best thinking and the most objective thinking. Everybody's trying to listen and learn and understand and reflect, and come up with, a better set of answers where we can. There are things that we can control for and things we can't. But we definitely want to challenge ourselves to make sure we represent the fans in the very best possible way that we can. And it's not, it's not a reflection on anybody, I think, in the organization. It's, there are things that you can predict and other things you can't. So it's not a crapshoot, use the word earlier, but there are many variables that come into play in what produces the kind of success. And I do think all of my business experience is long-term. Rich McKay may be one of the most junior executives with us, AMBSE, our broad businesses, if you will, and he's been with us for 20 years. Our golf business is run by a guy who's been with us for 37 years, best golf specialty retailer in the world today. I mean, so continuity is important for a lot of reasons, which we don't have time for today. It's not the purpose for today, but you want to have long-term continuity where you can, because of values, because of seeing vision the same way, being able to, build an organization that represents what we're looking for. And the truth of the matter is the great coaches who've coached for a long time, whether it be Coach Belichick, 24 years, or Coach Tomlin, 17 years, or I don't know how many years Sean McVay's been in LA. How many years now?
7, 8.
7, 8 years. Kyle's been. I mean, so, it can be done. I mean, it definitely can be done. And I look at the successes that I look at, in my opinion, and I would say fans would say the same thing with Coach Smith and Coach Quinn. They were very successful runs over a very long period of time, winning games at rates that we've never had in the history of the franchise. I mean, we've never had a back-to-back winning season. When I bought the team in 2001, Commissioner Tagliabue told me at that time at the closing that, by the way, this franchise you bought has never had back-to-back winning seasons. I said to Paul, and Paul was the brightest guy in the room. He never would say it, but he was the brightest guy. I said, well, that can't be right. Went back and I checked and I said, I mean, it's probably before the internet was even available. I said, he is right. But, Coach Smith, 5 winning seasons in a row. Coach Quinn, second coach to get us to the Super Bowl. I mean, we've had a lot of success with coaches that have lasted longer than 3 years. So I think that's available out there. It's doable out there. I think that we can have the same kind of success and achieve that at that level and higher as we go forward too. We'll have a ton of good candidates. It's a great city. The building's great, but that's really not what the issue is. I think they'll love the roster. They'll love where we are in terms of transitioning. Rich, I mean, you cannot downplay the importance of what we had to go through in terms of salary cap situation. Every team went through salary cap pressure because of COVID. When the revenue went down because of COVID, our cap went down. But, because of our rolling the dice and being committed to this veteran population we had on our roster, and it wasn't one person, it was a group organization that was making those commitments. At some point, we just had to stop pushing that ball down the field and just say we need to go through a readdress and a reset. And we did it. You can nuance it at any position any way you want to, but essentially we had to do that, as every franchise does in the NFL. And so I think we've made a lot of progress. Today,
David, what you know about Gregory Hines,
I don't know
man?
exactly what the numbers will be, but we'll have a serious amount of cap money left this year. We'll be active again in free agency again this year. So, I think we're in one of the best positions we've been in for a very long period of time as a franchise. We now have to pick a new CEO for our football team.
Okay, somebody needs to take the mic from Grandpa.
Arthur, over here. On a maybe more of a personal level, having watched you the day you got the job, I guess in New Orleans for that press conference initially 22 years ago, and having sat through 7, 8 of these over the years, is it safe to say that this season is as disappointed close to as you've ever been with a football team, and that helped push this decision, given the excitement of the fan base 14, 15 weeks ago and how quickly it went away, given all the excitement and hype around this season on a personal level, is this as disappointed as you've ever been with watching each week play out game to game?
Well, I mean, I can reflect back, to a specific point in time when I was a little more disappointed than this season, but, and I don't want to bring that up again, but, and you all can probably guess what that might be, but I would say
2007.
this, we definitely underachieved this year. I think Coach Smith would say that. I think Rich can say whatever he would say. He's, extraordinarily articulate. But I definitely think that we definitely underachieved this year by a lot. And I was very clear from my standpoint at the beginning of the year. It wasn't about, getting to the playoffs. It wasn't about, obviously that's our goal and to compete and be in the tournament, the next tournament, the one that's going on next weekend, et cetera. But it was more about, was getting to the next level, winning more games, et cetera, and playing at a competitive level that we didn't come close to this year with the kind of consistency that I think that our roster really should have given us the ability to do. So I was significantly disappointed. And that, it's one of the reasons that we're here today. These press conferences, meetings, if you will, they're always painful. They're always difficult. I mean, I've hired 5 coaches during my 21 years. And, it's been, 3 out of the 5, I would say, were occasions that I was personally, really very disappointed.
And Rich, the fans, just elaborating, how aware were you of, because we've been doing this a long time, how angry your fan base had become with how this season, the lead up to it, and how much do you listen to the fan base, especially over the last 6 weeks, as you started to lose games that frankly most folks thought was unacceptable? How much do you hear that noise?
You hear it, right, Steak? You hear it whether you're going to read it or whether you're going to hear it on the radio or whether you're going to do. I've done this thing now the last couple of years where in the third quarter I go and sit on the bridges and just talk to the people, and you could definitely hear it and feel it. That isn't, that is information, but that isn't what motivates you to do it, because if you know that it's going to get better and here's why, and you really believe it, then you've got to be strong enough and have the patience to stay. But when you hear it, you also know that there's a tremendous amount of pressure that's going to come at that point in time, and it's going to come to everybody in that building, and that is not a good thing, because that creates a very tense atmosphere that all of a sudden, there's a loss here, a loss there, and it's the end of the world. You can feel that coming. You could feel it coming. But I would say the one thing about, and I want to go back to what Arthur said at the start, because I know you probably don't think this, but like our fan base and what's gone on here the last couple of years is crazy. I mean, first of all, we've created a home field advantage. When we first opened Mercedes-Benz Stadium, we didn't have it. Secondly, Coach Smith leaned into it. And we finished number 1 in the NFL and the voice of the fan last year. We've never really been in the top 20. We were number 1 this year. We might not be. We might end up number 2.
Bro, that's because
that's
food
because the
cheap,
environment
man.
they've created, our fans. So at home, it's been pretty good. There's been disappointments, but our overall not as good. But I say, do we hear the fan base? Of course you hear them.
Yeah. So I wanted just 2 comments. Just want to reinforce what Rich is saying, because it's really important. I don't think, and this goes back to the question that I think you asked earlier, I don't think our fans have lost faith in our franchise and our ability to be successful at the very highest level. And I say that not because I have, personal bias, because I feel that way, but I look at how the fans are in the building over the last 2 years. The results that Rich is talking about, that's done by the National Football League independently. That's not my personal opinion, his personal opinion, Tim Zalowski's personal opinion, Greg Beatles, anybody else, Steve Maher. That's based on independently them coming in. NFL studies every single game.
Fam,
of
listen.
the National Football League.
Somebody
over the
on the
course
side of
regular
these
season.
guys They're
So
gonna have to cut these
independently,
questions.
they're coming back and saying the
'Cause
last 2 years,
They
your
starting to
building with
sound
your fans
downright
in it
crazy at this
have
point.
been, either number one, basically number one, or number two, basically number one.
Somebody that's in
in the
control of
National
media
Football League.
media relations
So
is
do
gonna
our
have to
fans
cut these
believe
mics
in the
in a minute.
experience? Do they believe in our franchise? Do they believe in our capability to produce at the highest level? My answer is yes, they do. They have not given up hope. They're angry. They're frustrated. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. But I absolutely have faith and confidence in our ability to continue to not only dream but to fulfill at the next highest level. So I love our fans, but I appreciate them, and the results as you see them in the building, it's incredible with their energy that they're bringing to the team now, and we've earned that, and we'll continue to earn that, and we'll make sure that they feel that passion exists on our part.
God damn, man.
Just help us understand something organizationally, as far as, the way things are structured. You told us a couple of years ago, I think it was, that Richard, you were not involved in the day-to-day operations of football anymore. And then you just said a moment ago that the GM and the head coach report to you. So what sense does it make that you would have the GM and the head coach report to somebody about day-to-day operations who's not involved in day-to-day operations? I mean, that kind of feels like me reporting to my ex-mother-in-law in Texas about the status of my children. Like, it doesn't seem to make sense that you would not be involved in day-to-day operations, yet have day-to-day people report to you on what's going on.
Yep. So
She may have a different view on that, by the way.
I'm not a fan of hers.
Yeah.
So I'd say it to you this way. The day-to-day operation of the football team is run by the head coach when it comes to all the coaching and all the players and everything he does, and by the general manager when it comes to all of the players, player selection, all that, right? They both report to me. We meet at least probably maybe twice a week. We kind of go through everything that's going on in the building. We probably text, call, talk every other day. From my experience as a general manager, my job is to give them the support. It's not to give them the ideas, right? That's their job. And you want them
Then
to
let
be
them hire the
successful.
fucking
They
coach
don't need
then.
hearing my voice saying, I think we should do X or Y. That makes no sense to me. So what I try to do is make sure that we set up, all the procedures and everything we can to make sure that we have the processes in place to try to get the best decisions from the two decision makers and everybody that works for them. Because to Arthur's point, these are not small organizations anymore. This isn't like when I got in the league and there were 12 people that worked in the whole building. This is a way different operation today. And so that's how I operate. There are some in our league that don't have a person at my level. They don't exist. They just report to the owner.
You shouldn't
and they meet
exist
once a
either.
month, or they send them an email, or they do whatever. We do it differently than that. I think most are kind of going towards our method, which is having somebody there to give them support and the resources beyond just the owner, based on where the owner is in his career, his or her career. So that's just kind of the way we set it up. I talk to Arthur and Terry, I don't know, 25 times a week, but do I sit there and go to draft meetings? No, I don't go. That's not my place. That's their place. They're in charge of the draft.
Well, Rich is being, it's just who he is. He's being a little bit humble.
No, he's not. He's telling
so
you the
I
fucking
think
truth.
in
He doesn't
fairness,
do anything.
I
He's
think
telling
everything
you
said
the
is accurate.
truth.
However, he has a rich history as a general manager, working with many coaches in Tampa, here in Atlanta, certainly at the NFL level, on the NFL competition committee, which he chairs now for 26, 27 years, been on for probably 30 years, has worked with virtually every coach or general manager that you could name or think of. So he brings a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom. So I want to be clear. I think both Coach Smith and Terry will consult with Rich to get his wisdom, not necessarily initially to push something or start something, but we're thinking about this. I mean, what do you think, et cetera? That's clearly not my role. I mean, I don't pick players. I don't cross that line.
But
That's
y'all
not
are
my
picking
job.
the head
I
coach,
have
though.
lots of other jobs beyond just the Atlanta Falcons, other things as well. But even within the context of the Atlanta Falcons, that's not my responsibility. So Rich brings a lot of wisdom that they will lean into appropriately on occasion. And that's what they should do. And Rich should be able to share that
And
with
Rich
them. And I
McKay
expect
should
him
be
to
a
share that with them.
consultant, not the
But he should
CEO
not
of the
be the initiator of
fucking
everything.
team.
That's their job primarily. But you know what? If he has a great idea, we're interested in it. If we have an EA in the building who has a great idea, we're interested in hearing from he or she. Truly, great ideas come from lots of places, every floor, every wall, etc. So we want to hear good ideas wherever they come from.
Oh, yeah. I would say the answer to that is yes. The input is, yes, I would say I do. And I'm not bashful, never
And I'm
have been
counting on it.
bashful about giving my opinion. But I'm not going to demand my opinion because that's why they're hired. And,
But
so
y'all
I'm
are
not going to sit in a
hiring the
draft meeting. They
coach.
are going to, at the end of their draft meetings, when they set their board, they're going to bring Arthur and I in and say, this is our vision. This is what we think of the draft. This is what we think we should do. And we listen to it, ask the questions, and then the plan is set. So, and if we've got a question about it, I'm going to ask the question, but I'm going to let them make the decision.
I mean, the idea of the questions is to understand the strategy, to probe where necessary, to make sure it's solid, to make sure that we understand it so we can communicate it between our own ears and to other people that we're connected with as well. But also, particularly in the case of Rich, to share with them, well, I've, seen this movie many times and this is the way this may end. Think about this as an option, or understand this may end up taking place. Are we ready for that? So that's his job, and he does it extraordinarily well. And we're blessed to have somebody with his credentials, background, and his collaboration ability to work with, all the folks in our building to bring us the kind of success that we have had. Not of late. I get it. That's why we're here.
And the of late, I think, Brent, to your point, I do want to say that, listen, when we played in the Super Bowl, didn't win the Super Bowl, we went back the next year and went to the playoffs. And really,
That was my worst time.
Yeah.
In case,
Yeah.
in case, Steak, you couldn't figure that out.
If you couldn't figure that out,
yeah.
I give up. But when you look at this, let's just look at what happened, right? So, I mean, because I've relived this enough times. When that happened, the next year we went to the playoffs, and I thought Dan Quinn had his best year coaching. That was a very difficult season to come back from.
Yeah.
But then we continued to lean into that team, and as you lean into that team, you're taking salary cap risk, and as we took that risk, we didn't get the results, and then for different reasons. But as that happened, we were legitimately getting ourselves a little bit of deeper hole. So the one thing I would say is to Arthur Smith and to Terry is when they came on board, given what had just happened with COVID and given what had happened in 18 and 19, they had serious challenges. So I can't give them enough credit. And we all sat in the room and talked about it, but they had a plan of, this is how we're going to do it in year one. This is how we're going to do it in year two. And then this is who we're going to be in year three. And so there, I remember in the press conference for hiring, and I think we were virtual, when we hired Arthur Smith, the question was asked by someone who recently retired, is this a rebuild? And we said very clearly, no. Well, that was because you don't want to say it's a rebuild because you want to win and you're trying to win. But there was a lot of rebuilding going on for Arthur and Terry.
Dave? Yeah, going back to quarterback talk, just do you feel like lacking an answer at the position here is going to negatively affect you competing for some of the top candidates? And how important is that position going to be in the interview process?
Well, anybody in this room can answer that question, honestly, and would probably give you the same answer that I would give you, or that Rich McKay would give you, or that
Well, Arthur Blank went
anybody in
from
our
being
organization would
white
give you, or our fans would
to
give you.
Indian.
Having the right quarterback in
his
the
press
NFL is a
conference,
really
fam.
big deal. It doesn't mean
He
you have to
started off
necessarily
white.
the top 2 or 3 or
Now
4 or
this man
5.
looks
You'd
like
like
he's part
to
of
be
the
in that
Choctaw.
position, but you want to have a quarterback who's going to be in certainly top half, top quartile of the league, and somebody who's going to give you a chance to win. And Rich can give you the numbers better than I can, but being able to score points in this league is important. You got to be able to defend too, but being able to score points in this league is really important. So I think that, in my opinion, I would say you have certain situations around the NFL, and I'm using speaking a little bit out of school, but you look at the young man who's in San Diego. I mean, he's
He's in LA.
LA, I'm sorry. I just showed my age. I forgot they moved to LA. So, but they have a fine quarterback. So you could say, well, that's an advantage. On the other hand, I could easily make the argument that you've got a pretty rich quarterback, potentially rich quarterback draft this year. There'll probably be some quarterbacks who may be available in free agency.
In a minute, Arthur
by
Smith
trade,
gonna start
et
to
cetera,
match
as well.
that shirt he got on.
So I think to a new head coach, I think that's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to, kind of pick their own partner, if you will, their own spouse, if you will, and, who they can grow with, who they can select, or however we acquire them, wherever we acquire their rights, draft, free agency, whatever it may be. So I think in many ways, when they look at the foundation that's built here and the roster that's built here and the offensive side of the ball, I mean, you look at an offensive line that year before last was the third highest in rushing in the National Football League, which is not one game. It's over a course of a season. And this year, down a little bit from that, but still very competitive running the ball. And you look at the quality of the draft picks we've had on the offensive side in the last 3 years.
Now,
and an
they were
offensive line
supposed
that
to
is
be on
extraordinarily well coached and well
92,
prepared and plays
0.9
hard
or
every week with
92.7 a game, whatever the
virtually,
fuck they call themselves.
almost no
At
injuries.
5 o'clock. This
So
thing has
I
went
think
way
to,
over.
the right kind of coach.
But shout
I think
out
it's
to
an
these reporters,
opportunity,
man,
and this is
giving
a
these
big
two
part
that
of what
work.
we got to pick going forward. But I'd rather pick my own spouse and have somebody else pick them for me.
So the way we'll do the process, Ax, good. He asked the question of, have we and requested interviews of anybody. The way we've done it before is we've not told you, and we'll do it again this time. We're not going to announce when we're requested interviews because they do take a little while to get scheduled. You never know. We will tell you as soon as we've interviewed somebody. We'll tell you that night. We'll tell you that next morning, whatever it may be. That's what we did last time, and I kind of like that process. Doesn't mean you won't get it before then because of the agents. That's just the way it goes, but that would be our plan.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me just pull up my notes here. You guys have talked a lot about improvement. You've talked a lot about what maybe Arthur Smith wasn't able to get done. What improvement would you have needed to see for him to still be here today? I don't think that's been really answered at all.
No, I don't think. I mean, I think that maybe it goes back to the question that Steak asked earlier. I'm speaking for myself. Rich can answer himself, and Terry might give you his own version of the answer. But I don't think it's any one factor. There are a lot of things that come into play, and do you feel at the end of the day, after watching this movie unfold or play unfold, do you really feel like this is the best place for us to be to take our franchise to the next level? And for many reasons, for me, wasn't one reason. There are many reasons for me that I felt we should move on. Beyond the personal side of it, just from, which makes it extraordinarily difficult. And, God willing, will always be that way, that I will never take these things lightly because of the impact on human beings. But professionally, there were just a number of factors that went into it. And the fact we ended up where we did after we had a schedule that was really to our favor. I think generally, most people would say we drafted pretty well over 3 years. Generally, most people would say that our free agency, particularly this last year, has been, it was the first year we really had real cap money to work with. It was generally would get very high grades. So, maybe to Steak's point earlier, the gap between achieving and underachieving was much bigger than what I anticipated this year, in a variety of ways. Rich, I don't know you.
Michael, I have nothing beyond that. Listen, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Arthur Smith. The process of going through the evaluation of whether this was the right thing to do took a little time. And in our mind, this was the right thing to do, and it was the time to do it. But please don't put it on one factor. There's plenty of factors that go into it.
But I want to just repeat, and maybe just in closing say this. Throughout our lives, all of us in this room and everybody's listening and watching this, personally, professionally, has to make big decisions in their lives. And sometimes you make these decisions, you look back and you reflect, how do I feel on the other side of the decision? Do I feel better or do I feel worse? I mean, I will tell you, beyond my personal pain for the coach and his family and all the coaches potentially and their families, et cetera, we'll see how that sorts out. But I feel professionally that this was absolutely the right move to make because of my responsibility, our responsibility to our fan base, and not only to the players we have today, but the players in the future. And I'm at peace with it. I'm not at ease with it, but I'm at peace with it and feel that we made the right decision. And I'm obviously we're here today to share that with you. Okay. Thank you all so much. Appreciate your time today.
Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. So there you have it. That was, there's a lot to unpack there, man. I'm not going to spend another, let me put my music back on. I'm not going to spend another hour unpacking it. There are some things that I found seriously troubling in this press conference. One, they did not have to have this press conference today. If Terry Fontenot is somewhere else, like at the national championship game, y'all could have postponed this shit until tomorrow. Or how about just have him fucking there? But to sit here and say that Terry Fontenot, one of the main problems I had with what Rich McKay said is the head coach did not have to report to the GM. He had to report to him. That's a big no-no. There's a chain of command for a fucking reason. That's the first. And then he talked about they didn't make any decisions. They left that to the GM and the head coach. Yet you're fucking hiring the head coach with input from the GM. They made Terry Fontenot look so bad in this press conference. So now people are going to take from this press conference, who's actually running this team? Now, they did confirm something I knew a while back, maybe year one. And let me say this. I actually respect Arthur Blank and Rich McKay for stepping into this smoke. Because they were supposed to have a radio interview at 5 o'clock. It is 5:33 right now. Shout out to these reporters for giving them that work. I knew once that first hard question went through, they were about to give them the business. But this was such a disrespect to your GM. Even last night when they put out the statement that Arthur Blank and Rich McKay would be in charge of looking for the next head coach. Now, they've done this before. But now what they want you to believe is that while they were looking for the head coach, Terry Fontenot had input on this. So a guy you hadn't hired yet. This shit's so confusing to me. Listen, McKay shouldn't be there. Because McKay basically telling you what he ain't doing there. And then Art had to kind of interfere. Well, he's humble. No, he's not doing shit. He's a consultant masquerading as a CEO. Who the fuck gets a CEO because of their wisdom? You have to actually, you got to do something, bro. But the fact that there's no chain of command for the head coach, bro, that's essentially That is essentially like you as an employee bypassing your manager and talking to the regional manager about what's going on at your store. Fam, trust me when I tell you this. The regional manager gonna look at you and ask you, have you talked to your manager? No, but me and my manager, we don't get along, so I have you talked to your manager at all about this? No, I hadn't. Go back and talk to your manager. What Rich McKay is saying is that Arthur Smith can walk right past the goddamn GM's office and report to him. So now I'm looking at this shit like, this why this shit in disarray. But the one thing he pointed out, which now we know is fact, which I pretty much had my hunch about anyway, is Art had the draft. That's why I was able to predict Kyle Pitts. That's why I was able to predict Bijan. That's how I was able to predict Drake London. Because those were his picks. So, if that's true, guess who else was his pick? Desmond Ridder. Because we saw in the offseason, that was Terry's dealing. Terry was wheeling and dealing in the offseason with the defense. Because remember, the first year, Art brought in Dean Pease. But when they fired, retired, however the fuck you want to put this, it was Terry Fontenot that brought in Nielsen. But man, they could have postponed this, fam. They could have postponed this. You have to have your GM fucking present. And they're going to catch backlash from this. I expect Terry Fontenot to have a press conference within 48 hours. Because basically what you showed us as a fan base, and shout out to the reporters, because they caught wind of this shit too. Where's Terry Fontenot at? He's supposed to be a GM. Well, you know, head coach, well, the way we have it designed is a head coach doesn't have to report to the GM. They report to me. Your GM, I understand. Your head coach, fuck no. One of the big problems I see right here, right now, there's too many chefs in the kitchen, and you hired one man to cook. Blank, you shouldn't be looking for a head coach. McKay, you shouldn't be looking for a head coach. That's the GM job. Because what y'all just did, and you probably didn't even realize it, you just gave Terry Fontenot a major pass. Because guess what? The next coach that y'all bring in here, if he sucks ass, you can't even put that on the GM, because Terry can simply turn around and say, y'all hired him. I had a guy in mind. I told y'all what my input was. Y'all told me to go fuck off, and y'all hired another coach. So in another 3 years, if this thing don't work out, Falcons fans, media, don't look at me. These guys just spent an hour and a half fucking telling you how they run things here. And we're talking about wisdom from a guy who's been here 20 plus years. And we got 2 winning seasons in the last 11 years. Bro, what kind of fucking wisdom he giving you? All right, man, this was needed because we saw exactly how dysfunctional this front office is. This was needed. Notice how they distanced themselves from Desmond Ridder. And they pretty much said they were on board with whatever the head coach and the GM wanted. But now, without a shadow of a doubt, that was Arthur Smith's pick. Without a shadow of a doubt, that's why he was willing to die on that hill for Desmond Ridder, because he picked him. If that wasn't his guy, when Dez caught that concussion, he ain't coming back in. If I know for damn well Dez ain't my guy, this Terry Fontenot guy, minute he got the concussion, bro, listen, we just gonna roll with Taylor Heineke for the rest of the season. Ain't no promise of you coming back. We ain't playing musical chairs. You out. But Art bet his job on this guy. This was a bad look. This was a bad look. If you just put Terry Fontenot up there, Terry Fontenot says, hey, listen, we decided to go another way. First of all, his press conference probably wouldn't have been an hour and a half. It might have been about 25 minutes. That way, Arthur Blank is covered. That way, Rich McKay, who shouldn't be covered, is covered because it all falls on the GM. And there's a reason why this all falls on the GM, because usually your fucking GM is the one putting the team together top to fucking bottom. Y'all just approve it. But now what we're finding out is y'all are doing more than approving it. Y'all are going out and doing the shit. It's a bad look, fam. But one thing for certain, Rich McKay proved that he don't need that position at all. Well, you know, most teams don't have my position. Really? Oh, yeah, but they're adopting it now. Bruh, you have been sitting here leeching off of Arthur Smith for 20 plus years. And I see why Arthur don't want to let you go, because it's deeper than your position. He probably views you as his son. And he's just not ready to fire you. But also you're a scapegoat. Because as long as you're around and people know that you're useless. But he kind of avoids accountability also. I feel for Terry Fontenot, man. I feel for Terry. Can't even cook now. I watched the Commanders press conference. Wasn't really that long, just straight to the point. Came out and said, hey, look, I'm going to be in charge of finding the new head coach. I'm going to have assistance from, I forgot one of the guys' names, but the other guy was Bob Myers. Just very to the point. Nothing fucking exciting about it at all. One of the biggest parts of being a GM is really to be the shield for the owner. They ain't even letting Terry Fontenot be that. They say, hey, listen, we gonna jump in front of all these bullets. And they deserve it. After listening to him, they deserve it. I'm gonna give Art and Rich McKay credit for showing up. And for actually allowing those questions to happen. Because we've seen some of these owners duck and dodge questions. But this is a front office thing. You hire a GM to do this so you don't have to do it. Now you get to approve or disapprove the final. You get to make all the final decisions. I get that. But you have to trust that your GM knows what the fuck they're doing. An owner shouldn't be heading up any fucking thing unless you fire the GM. And if you fire the GM, I guess that's supposed to be, man, Rich McKay trash. I'm just gonna call it what it is, fam. Rich literally got up there and told you, hey, I'm useless. Oh, yeah, you know, I do make day-to-day operating decisions. I do. But then when you got Art slipping up talking about, yeah, we need to make sure we have a good CEO. My guy, he's sitting right there next to you. Now I'm gonna blame that on old age. But man, whoo! This was a bad presser, man. And it speaks volumes as to why this team is run like it's run. You talk about Lamar Jackson. You don't have the salary cap to go after Lamar Jackson, but you went after Deshaun Watson. Then you say you were just an observer. Really? That ain't how I remember that. I remember there were two teams. Two. Not five. Two. Who were in final contention for Deshaun Watson. The Falcons were one of them. Bro, that's more than being an observer. And then the Saints started making moves early that morning. So we had him. And it wasn't until Cleveland came in the 25th hour and said, we're going to pay you $230 million fully guaranteed, that you lost him. What are you going to tell us next? You were an observer for that boy that's playing up in Chicago now? That's what y'all going to tell us next? You were more than an observer in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. You were one of the final two teams. But now we acting like, oh, we decided to go another way. Yeah, $230 million fully guaranteed to make you do that. Yeah, man. Oh God, this was awful. This was awful. This was awful. Now it's going to be interesting to see what kind of head fucking coach we get. Now, Bill Belichick earlier, or yesterday, came out and just said he wants to coach. He just wants to coach. Take from that what you will. But, man, my confidence is shaky right now with these guys. Man, it's shaky. It's shaky. And I feel bad for Terry Fontenot. Because basically Fontenot was brought here to do everything but hire a coach and make sure the books were right. Kind of sort of what Thomas Dimitroff was doing until they got into salary cap purgatory because they had to pay Matt Ryan, they had to pay Julio. But man, this was bad. But within 48 hours, Terry Fontenot need to be in front of a mic. You say he's there and then he's there in spirit. No, Terry needs to be there or postpone the fucking press conference until he is. We've been sitting here wondering, fam. Why this team keeps producing this shit? Finally got our answer in full bloom. RUA says Fontenot was bought here to just shop for the groceries. Actually, just shop for the groceries. That's what it seemed like. For them to tell you, now they hired Arthur Smith first, but then they want you to believe that Terry Fontenot had input on what coach was going to come here. And he was yet to be hired. Man. Boy, the verbal acrobatics I heard in some of this shit. Y'all want a hands-off approach, but y'all are hiring the head coach. Y'all want continuity with the GM and the head coach, but you're allowing the head coach to walk right past the GM's office and talk to the CEO. Fam, you know, this has nothing to do with football, but let me tell you this. In the military, that's called breaking command. Breaking rank. If you, as an E2 or an E3, walk past your drill sergeant and had an issue to talk to the first sergeant, bro, that was a serious fucking thing. Because they gonna ask you, did you talk to your drill sergeant private? No. Oh, bro, they gonna get in your ass. Military don't play about breaking rank. And last time I checked, Terry Fontenot's rank is higher than Arthur Smith's was. So you're allowing Arthur Smith to break fucking rank. Huh? Oh, I got major issue with that. Terry, at this point, Terry has no power. None. So nobody, and I mean no, after listening to this, nobody can fault Terry Fontenot for anything. He has no power. They're allowing head coaches to walk right past him. You can't break rank and expect the person that's in between ranks to respect any fucking thing you gotta say. They don't, because McKay and Blank don't even respect Terry at this point. And Terry ain't done nothing but balance the books, put together a solid defense. This is why I said Terry's job should be safe. But after this, bro, you can't even scapegoat Terry Fontenot. You can't even do it. Because they just told you. And they showed you by action also. By Terry not being there. If you respected Terry enough, Terry would have either been there or you would have waited to have this press conference. Because optics mean a lot. And the bigger problem is Terry probably could have shielded y'all from a lot of this shit. They didn't even, family, whoever is in charge of media for the Falcons ought to be fired after this. It don't even make sense. If Terry Fontenot was here, Terry's going to take more shrapnel than y'all are. Now, Rich McKay probably not, because Rich McKay should have been up out of here. But a lot of these questions might have been redirected to Terry Fontenot because he's the GM. Prove It says this has been the norm since the purchase of the team. That's the thing that's got to change. But Terry should have been there today. Or they should have just simply said, hey, listen, you know, usually we do these interviews on the Monday, but, you know, our GM is down in Houston right now, so we're going to respect the fact that he's not here. We'll come talk to y'all tomorrow. Nobody would have had a problem with that. Nobody would have had a problem with that. Jarvis says, I salute the media for the questions they asked. They answered a lot. Oh, media got in their ass. I'm actually, once I knew that first hard question, once they let that through, I'm like, oh boy, you can't do that with reporters, bro. Because once a hard one comes through and you answer that one, oh, they probably had a notebook of 20 questions and they went to their hardest ones because some of them got up there and just sounded just frustrated. And I'm like, man, hey. Oh, and another thing that I'm proud of. This is an outlier. They fixed the fucking mics. That's the clearest I've heard D-Led talk all year. Them mics was on today. Usually it's an echo. You gotta turn your volume up to hear the questions. Not today. They made sure to have some of them Shure mics on deck. Volume at max. But, whew, Carlos says, be a good boy and do as you're told. Shout out to the media for giving them that business. Oh, yeah. You know what? It's been a while since I've seen a press conference like this on any team. Usually they're boring because they get all political with the questions. They get all political with the answers. The minute a hard question gets pitched, they deflect or somebody interferes. Not today. Caleb says, update me how the presser went, fam. I was out and just now caught the stream. Hey, listen, fam. When we end the stream, just play the stream back because I put we listened to the whole entire thing. It's an hour and like 34 minutes long. Hold on for a second. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, people sending me text messages like, did you just see that train wreck? Yeah. This is an absolute train wreck, bro. 3 Dirty says, so when do you think Terry Fontenot will be in? It's got to be in 48 hours. This is not a good look for the organization. And I wouldn't be surprised, fam, if they put a mic on Terry Fontenot tonight. But you kind of have to reinforce that he's the GM because what they told us, basically, this motherfucker ain't got no power. Yeah, you know Terry Fontenot, he has input on a lot of things. Input? This motherfucker the GM. He should have more input on the team than you, Rich McKay. All you out here doing is providing fucking wisdom. This man actually out there on patrol, making sure the scouting reports are getting done, making sure the books are balanced, checking contracts, making sure he's not over the salary cap, protecting the purse, getting quality players for certain positions. And you out here offering wisdom. Bruh, stop. And you letting head coaches walk right past this motherfucker to talk to you, who gives wisdom. You should be a consultant at best. At best. Man, we as Falcons fans probably doing more than Rich McKay. Let's just be real. Let's keep it a bow wow. There are content creators out here working every day for free, talking about the Falcons. Ain't no telling how much this motherfucker getting paid as CEO, giving wisdom. Arthur Blank, here's a little piece of wisdom I got for you. It's free. Don't cost you nothing. I don't even want a position. Fire Rich McKay. You're wasting money there. But a chain of command got to be fucking enforced. Period. The reason why a lot of these organizations, and it's just in any sport, are consistently good is because there's a fucking chain of command. Unless you're LeBron James or somebody, and I'm talking about all across sports, unless you a LeBron, ain't no justification to going over the head coach talking to, no! You don't let the players do it, but you let the head coach. Man, fam, I'm done on that. I'm done on that. But they embarrassed their GM. They embarrassed their GM. And now we see there's dysfunction at the top. Well, I mean, but, you know, we've kind of known it with Rich McKay. And let me tell you something, fam. Anybody that's a head coach prospect, they might watch this and might be an attractive job, might not be. On paper, it's an attractive job. You got talent on defense, you got talent on offense, you got salary cap, and you got drafts. You got draft picks. And all you really need to do is find a competent quarterback. It's an attractive job from that level. And who knows, maybe a coach would like to walk past the GM. But if I'm Terry Fontenot, after this, man, why y'all got me here? It's just a figurehead job. But anyway, fam, I'm about to hop up off here, man. I'm pretty sure other content creators will talk about this ad nauseum, and I'm be tuning in for that shit. So I'm pretty sure if Smitty ain't on by now, he should be on. Uncle Steve, Atlanta Bird Gang, AFN. Y'all know Mad Mike probably gonna see. Here's the problem. The problem is y'all motherfuckers. So go check them out, man. They're probably gonna have things that I hadn't even thought of yet. On there, you know what I mean? But I'm a little frustrated right now. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm frustrated after watching this. And to be honest, Rich McKay and Arthur Blank are in the way. But I'll tell you this, next coach that come in here, if he's trash and he's boo-boo, nobody better not mention the GM. No, I mean nobody. Nobody. At this point, Terry Fontenot is kind of exempt from any blame at this point. Head coach bad? Look at McKay. Look at Blank. One of them got to go. And it damn sure ain't going to be Blank. But we can't put the next head coach on Terry Fontenot because he only has input. That's it. He only has input. He doesn't have the majority say of. He just has input. So anyway, fam, I'm up out of here, man. Thanks to the comment section. Thanks for y'all rock, man. We've been on 2 hours and 20 minutes, man. And shout out to all the other content creators. I'll be able to catch y'all later on tonight, man, and in the morning. But we'll be back on Friday, man. We'll be back on Friday. Y'all have a great rest of your week, man, and I will holla. Peace.